Hi folks, welcome back to my World of Tanks replays with the mighty Jingles. Today we're in the garage with the IS, the Josef Stalin Tier 7 Russian heavy tank. I do like the IS, it's a good tank. I think it suffers in a few departments, well actually it suffers in quite a lot of departments, but it definitely has its strengths, and they to a large extent cover up for its weaknesses. But we'll start off by looking at the stats, and then we'll talk about the tank itself in slightly more detail, and then we'll get on to the replays. And I've got a couple of them lined up for you, because I had to spend 4 days playing this game in this tank before I finally got enough decent footage to be able to properly show you what this tank can do. I had at one stage 12 straight games with nothing but tier 9 matches, and in one of them I was the only tier 7. Even the artillery and the scouts were ranked higher than I was. Now this is not typical of the matchmaker that you can expect to get in the IS. I just need to point that out right at the start. It was the most lousy streak of rotten matchmaking I have ever experienced in this game in over a year of playing. It was literally 12 straight tier 9 games, one after the other in this thing. It was absolutely absurd. In 4 days I've managed to have one tier 7 game in this tank and one tier 8 game in this tank. And we'll show you those in the replay. Anyway, don't take that as a, oh my god, the matchmaker is just totally biased against the IS7, against the IS, because it isn't. It's just, lousy luck. And probably down to the time of day I'm playing the thing. But anyway, moving on. The tank itself. Yeah, it's a good tank. It's a very good tank. 1230 hit points, which is average for a tier 7 heavy. It's not as much as the Tiger. It's more than the AMX M4, and I think it's more than the T29 as well. So it's kind of average. Let's have a quick look. T29, yeah, it's 100 more than the T29. So it's got a good amount of hit points. Nothing to worry about there. And it's quite light for a heavy tank. 46.8 tons in my configuration, with a good powerful engine, 700 horsepower, which means it can do up to 34 kilometers per hour, way faster than the Tiger, and comparable to the T29 and the AMX M4. Hull traverse is pretty good, 35 degrees per second. It's not bad at all. It's quite nimble for a heavy. It turns reasonably well. It has quite a tight little turning circle, even when you're going at full speed. Turret traverse, not that good. It's not. It's kind of American. No, not American. It's kind of like German heavy tank turret traverse speeds. Only 28 degrees per second, which is, it's enough. It gets the job done. A lot of the time, you need to, if you're trying to track a target quickly, get that gun round a barrel, and you have to turn the hull as well. And combined, taking into consideration with the hull traverse speed, that 28 degrees of turret traverse is, it's manageable. It's enough. It gets the job done. View range, well, it's the shortest sighted of the tier 7 heavies, but that's to be expected. Russian optics weren't that good. They were good enough. They got the job done. 350 meters is by no means a low view range. It's good enough. It's just not as good as the others. Signal range, again, Russian radio technology, not as good as the French, the Americans, or the Germans, but 625, this is a common theme when we're talking about the IS. It's good enough, it gets the job done. 625 meter signal range. There you go. But it's a heavy tank, so what we really came here to look at was the gun and the armour. Armour-wise, it's pretty good. The hull armour at the front is 120mm thick. 90 at the sides, 60 at the rear. So, keep your front pointing towards the enemy. It should come with a big sign, like on a claymore mine. This side towards enemy. The turret is 100mm all round, front, side and rear. And it is kind of rounded and bouncy at the front. But there is one problem with, there's two problems with the frontal armour on the IS. And the first is, well, there's your weak spot, your driver's patch there. Anybody who gets the chance and is accurate enough is going to shoot you here if you expose your front to them. Which is what you should be exposing to them, because that's where your strongest armour is, obviously. And the other problem that you can have with the IS, and we're going to demonstrate this in one of the replays, is this very, very well sloped upper glacis here can actually work against you. And that's because of the way the front of the turret sticks out over the top of the hull. It can act as what we call a shot trap. The T-44 has this problem as well. Basically what happens is a shot will come in, it will strike that frontal upper plate and will bounce off and go right through the bottom of the turret. And it will wreck your gun, and it might kill your gunner, and it will certainly do a lot of damage. And you will find on the IS that you do tend to get your gun knocked out quite a bit. So I would always recommend saving a repair kit for the gun. And it's because of a number of factors. The shot trap effect that I've just mentioned here, and also because the front of that turret isn't difficult to penetrate. Russian tanks don't really have very much in the way of gun mantles, certainly not like the Americans do, and not even like the Germans do. The armour thickness at the front of the hull, the front of the turret, isn't that much better around the gun. And while the front of the turret is nice and rounded, shots that strike dead on in the middle, they are going to penetrate. It's only, and I use that word in inverted commas, 100mm thick. And it's not that difficult to penetrate for most of the guns that are going to be shooting back at you. Speaking of guns, the IS does get a very wide selection of guns, as you can see. So we're going to look at them in slightly more detail on the research tree. Now, the stock gun, the D5T, you never, ever want to use on this thing because it is just shit. So shit, I'm not even going to waste your time looking at the stats. If you've been running up the Russian medium tank line, you should already have access to the D5T 85BM, which is the new gun, introduced on the Su-85 in a modified version, and also on the T-34-85. As you can see, it's available on a wide variety of Russian heavy and medium tanks: T-43, T-44, T-34-85, KV-13, and the IS. I would highly recommend, if you do not already have the D10T gun from the Russian medium tank line, specifically the T-43 and the T-44, that you start off using this, just to be able to grind out the 16,500 XP you need for that gun, because the choice of guns that you're going to use on the IS pretty much come down to two guns, the 100mm D10T or the 122mm D25T. Now, to get to this gun, you have to unlock the second turret, and you have to go through this gun, and that is going to take you a while. That turret is 12,200 XP, that gun is 17,000 XP, and it's going to be far, far easier grinding that XP using that gun. I mean, you could use this one. It's not a bad gun, but it's not a heavy tank gun by any stretch of the imagination. I would recommend using the D10T, purely because it just does more damage, and because of the way you have to play the IS. The gun selections are not accurate. They have long reloads, they have horrible aiming time, but they do have a lot of alpha damage, and that dictates the way you need to play the tank. It's not a sniper, it's not a medium range fighter, it is very much a close range fighter, and when you're at close range you want to be doing as much damage as you can up front, and then getting back and around the corner or into cover and not taking return fire. You can't do that with the 85mm gun. That requires sustained fire to achieve the same level of damage per minute. With these guns, the D10T and the D25T, it's all about rolling around the corner, derping away at them, and then getting back, and doing as much damage as you can in one shot. And that's how the IS works. So your choices are the D10T or the D25T, 122mm. And with this gun, the 122mm, you're basically a heavy tank version of the Su-100. It's effectively the same gun, and they have, the usual Russian characteristics of really slow, between around 5 shots per minute rate of fire. And even with a heavy caliber tank gun rammer, this thing takes over 10 seconds to reload. 175mm of penetration, whopping amount of damage, 390mm. That's the same amount of damage that a tier 10 medium tank gun does. That's a lot of damage on a tier 7 heavy tank. Appalling, lousy accuracy, 0.46. Aiming time, up to 3.4 seconds. It's just horrific. It's even worse than some of the French heavies. That's how bad it is. The aiming time on this thing is just horrific. And that's why I would always use the 122mm gun, because you cannot afford to be sitting in front of a target for that long waiting for the sights to settle on him. But if you're at point blank range, you don't have to wait that long, because you're so close you're not going to miss. By comparison, you could use the 100mm exclusively. It isn't terrible. You do get a better rate of fire. The penetration is exactly the same. It's more than 100 less damage. In fact, it's 140 less damage. No, it isn't. It's 150. No, it's 160 less damage. My maths is terrible. I apologise. It's a lot less damage. It's still a good amount of damage. 230. It's not bad. It's more accurate, but it's still lousy accuracy, 0.42, and it has shorter aiming time, but it's still lousy aiming time. The D10T is more of a Russian high-tier medium tank gun, and not a very good one at that. But you can have some success on the IS with it, and I would recommend you use it while you're grinding up to this one, because this is what the IS is all about, in my opinion anyway. Monstrous derp. Just the alpha damage. And that's what the Russian heavies are all about. It's the getting up close and just unloading this monstrous gun into your face. At a range where the aiming time and the accuracy is irrelevant, and knocking out enemy tanks in 2 or 3 shots, and that's what the IS is great at doing. It does have a problem though, and that's because of the way you have to play it, by getting in close and just derping people at point blank range with that massive 122mm, which is fine at tier 7, still works quite well at tier 8. In a tier 9 game, it's not so good. That 120mm and 100mm of armour is butter in a tier 9 match, and the 175mm of penetration, well, the alpha damage is still pretty good. You still have to penetrate their armour to cause that kind of alpha damage, and the IS really suffers more than any of the other tier 7 heavy tanks. The higher up the tiers the battle it gets into goes, because it cannot be effective at medium to long range the way all of the other tier 7 heavies can, because the gun takes too long to aim. You have to expose yourself to return fire for far too long. You don't have the health pool to survive more than 3 or 4 hits, and it's probably just going to miss anyway, because it's got well over 0.4 accuracy. The Tiger can, and the AMX M4 have guns that are accurate enough and either have the damage or the penetration combined with the accuracy to work as a sniper in a tier 9 game, and they can stay safely back out of range and engage whatever the higher tier heavies and mediums are attacking. The T29, while its gun isn't as accurate as the AMX M4 or the Tigers, still has 279mm of frontal turret armour, and it can get itself hulled down and quite happily trade fire with tier 9 heavy tanks, because they're probably not going to be able to penetrate its turret. The IS has none of those options. It still has to get up close and personal with tier 8 and 9 heavy tanks in order to hurt them, and that's a bloody dangerous environment to be in for a tank that only has 120mm of armour at the front. And for that reason, the IS suffers more than any of the other tier 7 heavies. The further up the tiers, the battles it gets into goes. But that doesn't make it a bad tank. It just means it's the heavy tank that you would least like to be driving in a tier 9 game. But it's still fun to play. It's just not fun to play when you get 12 tier 9 games in a row. And that's just the kind of luck I've been having lately. However, I still love the IS. I think it's a very good tank, and it's a very good training tank for the tier 8, tier 9 and tier 10 Russian heavy tanks, because they all play pretty much the same way. So let's have a look at some of the replays, and we'll give you an idea of how the thing performs in action, as it were. Oh, nearly forgot. Equipment. Duh, sorry. I'll come back for an encore. Yes, equipment. Well, no question about it. You need a large caliber tank gun rammer. You need an enhanced gun lane drive just to get the reload and the aiming time down. I mean, even with the gun rammer, it's still more than a 10-second reload in that 122mm gun. And it still takes an age for the sights to settle down, even with an enhanced gun lane drive. Now, as is often the case, I had spare camo nets, and I couldn't really afford to bung anything else on there. So camo net is what I've put on. Is there anything else that would be good to fit on this tank? Oh, hell yeah. Improve vents, get that aiming time and that reload speed down even further. Wouldn't be a bad idea, but it does cost you 600,000 credits. Toolbox wouldn't be a terrible idea because you're constantly getting tracked in this thing. If you use the side scraping technique to shoot around corners, which isn't a bad idea in this tank, you're going to find yourself getting tracked a lot. Anything else? Nah, not really. I would say improve vents over the toolbox, but the toolbox isn't a terrible plan. But, you know, it's still 500,000 credits, and it depends what you're going to use this tank for. If you're just skipping through it on the way up to the IS-3, which is a great tank, or, you know, whatever, higher up the tier, then, yeah, you probably don't want to go spending a great deal of money on it. But if you've got the gold to spare, and you are quite happy to demount the equipment that you've fitted and move it on to the next tank up the tier, then yeah, I would probably say go for improved ventilation or a toolbox on this little bugger, as well as the shell rammer and the enhanced gun lane drive. As for crew skills, well, commander, I've gone with recon, just more view range. I've gone for snapshot on the gunner for increased accuracy during turret rotation, just for bringing that gun to bear when you go around a corner. And then just repairs. It's never a bad idea to have repairs on a heavy tank, because they constantly get their tracks blown off by artillery or the gun knocked out, or it's just I'd rather keep the repair kit for repairing the gun, because it's inaccurate enough without being damaged, and I don't want to waste time using a repair kit to get my tracks back up, when even just 2 crew with a good amount of repair skills repairs the tracks on this thing and gets you mobile again relatively quickly. So that's why I've gone for that. And now we can finally get on to some of the replays and show you how you can expect this thing to perform in a pretty wide variety of games. So let's have a look. So, well, this is fairly indicative of the sort of games I've been getting into on the IS for the last 4 days. And I don't just mean more often than not, I mean every damn game. Really unlucky streak of matchmakers, coupled with complete moron teammates like that T20 driver, who just took 9% of his own health off by damaging my tracks, forcing me to pay a 2,900 credit repair fine for damaging a friendly tank. But yeah, back on topic. It's just been retard teammates like that T20 driver, and horrible matchmaking like the matchmaking in this one, which does make it very, very, very hard to show off what the IS can do. Now we did, well, you'll see. But this is definitely going to showcase what the IS is weak at doing. It is definitely the tier 7 heavy tank you least want to be driving in a tier 9 game. And the reason I say that is because the other 3 tier 7 heavies, the AMX M4, the Tiger, the T29, it's that gun in action. In order to hit anything at that sort of range, and that's only 150 meters, you have to aim. And it takes 3 seconds to aim. It takes more than 3 seconds to aim. And you don't want to be exposing yourself to enemy fire for 3.4 seconds in a tier 9 game, because they will kill you. Now you don't have to do that in any other tier 7 heavy tank. The Tiger has an accurate enough gun with enough penetration and damage to be able to sit back and snipe. It can perform that role in a tier 9 game. Same with the AMX M445. 200 meter range, bounced off the side of an E75. And just in case you're thinking that is an isolated incident, it isn't. You cannot use this thing as a sniper in a tier 9 game, it just doesn't penetrate. The T29, while its gun isn't that much better than the guns on... It's 3 bounces, by the way, in case you were counting. 1 miss, 3 bounces. While the gun isn't that much better than the 122mm on the IS, it does at least have a practically impenetrable gun mantle, so it can go hull down, and eventually some of those shots are going to penetrate and damage. The AMX M445 is kind of in the same position as the Tiger. It's got a very high penetration, reasonably accurate gun, and it can just stay back and provide covering fire. The IS cannot do that, as you've just seen. The gun just isn't up to scratch, and you have to expose yourself for far too long. So in order to perform, the IS has to get up close and personal in a way that the other Tier 7 heavies don't have to do in a Tier 7, Tier 9 game like this. So that's kind of bad.
We didn't even scratch them.
Another bounce. And yeah, you're going to say, well, that's because you didn't hit his weak spot. You can't afford to be hanging around in front of a Yag Tiger waiting to hit his weak spots. He will kill you. And that's why the IS just pretty sucks in a higher tier game. Well, that's not strictly fair. It gets worse the higher the tier of the game it's in a way that doesn't really affect the other guys. And that one just missed.
Penetration.
0 damage penetrating hit. Just in case you're not keeping track, I have done no damage to the enemy team. I've had 2 shots miss, everything else is hit, and even the ones that penetrate are not doing any damage. However, the team as a whole is doing very well in this game. Now, you are quite quick in an IS, and I thought, well, if these guys can hold this corner, screw that, I'll go around and get behind these fellas. But that quickly becomes not an option, as everybody behind me suddenly dies all at the same time, only leaving Field Marshal Rommel and his T20 here, holding that corner with our tier 8s and 9s cowering up at the top of the hill, which means I have to come down and hold this corner now. And my amazingly effective in a tier 9 game, tier 7 heavy tank. So all I can hope at this point is that these 2 guys on the corner here have turned around to face the bigger threat coming up the other side of the valley. And I wouldn't expect the T20 to go out first. He's a one-hit kill at this point, whereas I have full health. Okay, and it does look like they've backed off. I think I fired 9 shots so far. And that just bounced off the rear of a Yag Tiger. Now, I don't know if I'm just being incredibly unlucky here. I finally get a damaging hit, and it does less than the average damage roll. And that is the sort of environment the IS wants to be in. Point blank range shooting match. Because, and this is an extreme example, I just had the most appalling streak of shitty damage, penetration and hit rolls in that game, which kind of matched the appalling streak of lousy tier 9 matchmaker results that I was getting all through the course of the week playing this thing. But an extreme example though it may be, it does illustrate that even at long range, forget it, this thing couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And even if it did hit, it probably would hit at such a weird angle due to its crappy accuracy that it would just bounce and fly off or fail to penetrate anyway. It is not a sniper by any stretch of the imagination. At medium range, the higher the tier the opponents that you're shooting at, you can't even guarantee penetrations or hits. To be effective, this tank has to get close. 13 shots fired, 10 hit the target. Of the 10 that hit the target, 2 penetrated and did damage to the AMX 5100. 1 penetrated and did damage to the E75. So 13 shots fired, 10 hit the target, 3 did damage. And hits received, 3. I didn't notice the bounce, we must have had a bounce, but 2 hits received and we're at 50% health. The IS, more than any other tier 7 heavy, does not like being in high tier games. It just cannot compete. However, you get it into a tier 7 match, and to a lesser degree a tier 8 match, and it really can kick ass. It's not so disadvantaged by having to get up close and personal to do its best work. And you can see, however, that despite, well, we only really damaged enemy tanks with 3 shots, but because they were both at least 1 tier higher than us, we still got 2,500 doubled, so what, 1,350 XP out of that, because they're higher tier than we are. Clearly we didn't get any battle hero awards out of that one. And yeah, reasonable amount of credits. No, we kidding, that's a crappy amount of credits. We didn't do a lot of damage to anything, so you're not going to get many credits out of a game like this. But experience-wise, it is still, you know, beneficial. It does still pay off. You don't have to do a lot in a tier 7 heavy in a tier 9 game to get a lot of XP. But that was still a really crappy game. So let's have a look at another one. Okay, what we have here is the only tier 7 game I got into in the IS over the course of the last 4 days. And when I saw the matchmaker, I had high hopes for a good result out of this one, and I did alright, but well, no spoilers. You'll see what happens. But the first thing I want to draw your attention to is, you remember in the garage review I was talking about how the sloped upper glacis armour can act as a shot trap for shots that will end up penetrating the turret. I'm just going to slow things down here. And watch this. See that other IS? Watch where this shot lands and what it does. Okay, I'm going to fire. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. Ideally, I should have been aiming for his driver's hatch. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
That's gotta hurt.
There, did you see that? The shot hit his upper glacis here, bounced up and smacked right into the bottom of his turret, and took nearly a third of his health off. And that's the shot trap I'm talking about. Effectively, the shot hit that section of hull just underneath the driver's viewport, bounced right up and smacked into the bottom of the front of the gun turret. So we're losing 3-0. Oh look, everybody who went on at that open field has died. That T-29 gets a good hit into me. You have a look, straight through the driver's port, and all I could do in return was track him. And we're losing 5-0. And what I'm having to do here is effectively hold the both ends of a road at the same time against two ISs, a VK3601 and a T29. And I don't care how good you are, you can't do that. And we're losing 6-0. This end looks... oh, no. Another good hit on that IS, but I'm not able to concentrate my fire on any one tank. I have to pop to one end of the road, put a shot into one guy over there, then pop to the other end of the road, put a shot into the guy up there, and it's just... and we're losing 7-1. Now what I'm trying to do here is a little thing they call side scraping. I've only started trying to do it quite recently, but you'll see what I'm... There you go, bounced. Now, 0 damage, penetrating hit. Fantastic. The idea behind side scraping is that, and that's not a very good example of how to do it, is that from this angle, shooting at me, all he's really got to hit is my tracks. That's the theory. However, my angle isn't steep enough there, and I really should be closer to the front. And the idea is that when he shoots at you, your tracks are going to probably... It only works against one opponent, by the way. If there's anybody else at a different angle, you're a dead tank. But the objective is to present a really steep angle so that one or two things is going to happen. Either the tracks are going to eat the shot, or it's going to bounce because it's at such an angle off the side of the tank. And you only really pop back and expose the front of your turret when you're ready to fire. That's the theory. I'm not very good at it, however, but that's what I'm trying to do. So we've had 1 0 damage penetrating hit against this fella, and now I'm waiting for it to aim. Waiting for it to aim. Another 0 damage penetrating hit. Waiting to aim. Praying that, oh god, we're losing 1-9. He gets a good hit on me there, and damages my tracks. And then, finally, that should be a dead IS, but 2 shots out of 3 fail to do any damage. And, yeah. Now we're losing 10-1. And he sets me on fire, leaves me with 50 health, and I ain't going to survive that. So, yeah. 4 days of nothing but tier 9 games after tier 9 games, and just getting rolled over by E75s and IS3s and IS8s, and then I finally get a tier 7 match, and my team are completely fucking useless. Anyway, these things are sent to test us, so onwards and upwards. So finally, I ended up on Highway. New map in 7.5. And with the exception of the Siegfried Line Tier 7 game, this was the first non-Tier 9 match I'd had in this thing in 4 days. So there was a decent chance I could actually get a credible result out of this one. So, initially, I thought, well, I am kind of one of the fastest heavy tanks that we have. So, I will head in towards the city. As one of my commenters on a previous video has pointed out, the city's a bit of a noob trap. It's a bit like the bottom corner of the back road leading up to the southern base on Arctic. It's where all the stupid people go to die. But, you know, if you're not a stupid person, you can make a decent contribution in there, so... That was my initial thought. I'll head over here and see what we can do. And if you look at the map, there seems to be a lot of people with the same idea, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. A lemming train heading into the city that are going to freeze and cower and hide around a corner the second they spot one enemy tank. Well, lemming trains rarely work out well. But if people grow a spine and they push in here, it can be a decent tactic. And I really wasn't in the mood for messing around after the streak of games I've had in this tank over the last couple of days. So, I see this M18 coming, and I'm hoping he's going to pop out on this road where I could do a serious amount of damage to him, if I hit. But then he disappears, and it doesn't look like he's interested in coming round. And we got a 361H, and a Pershing, and a T44 up there, so he's probably running for it, if he has any sense. So confident I'm not going to run into that Hellcat. Off I go. KV1S over there, he's got a nasty gun, same gun as me. As that VK361 has just discovered. So we've got a Pershing, an ARL, Hellcat, KV1S. And there's another tank destroyer over by the Pershing. I just couldn't see what it was. Oh no, that was the Hellcat, who's now dead. Alright, so ARL and a Pershing. Oops, sorry Mr. KV3. Off you go. Let's go and help this T-32. Looks like the other fellas have that KV-1S well in hand. Now the ARL could get a shot at me here. That's alright. I'll take that risk. Point blank work, 210 damage. Yeah, I'll take 210 damage from an ARL. But I ain't that dumb. I will keep this wall between us. And here comes artillery. Okay, I could kill this M26 with one more shot. ARL's not pointing his gun my way. Okay, he's trying to kill that T-44. Oh, below average damage roll. Somebody else gets the Pershing. Okay, now we need to push. I can't stick around because artillery I know is aiming this way. That was a good shot, which means somebody else is going to get the kill of the ARL. Not that it matters. You know, I've done my damage, and I'm just happy that he's not shooting back at me. However, have a look at the map. Our base is under threat. Now there are enough tanks here, and the scores are even, 6-6. There are enough tanks here with me to be able to push on the enemy base. Or at least you'd think so.
It bounced off.
It's this gun. Just, I mean, I'm not saying you can't damage, penetrate and kill things at long range with this gun, but you shouldn't count on it. So yeah, I'm looking at the map here and I'm not feeling very confident about our base, so I decide I'm going to go back and help that KV-4 who's already got one kill defending our base. And it looks kind of like this KV-5 here, it's the same idea. But I can't resist. I mean, it's too good a shot to deny.
Penetration.
Pick the right targets and, you know, this gun can hit things at long range. But it's very inconsistent, as you can see. If I've been driving a Tiger, T29, ARL M4, that would have been a dead M6. But I'm not, so it isn't. KV-4's taking a beating up there, but they're tough tanks. They got some buffs. I mean, they really badly needed it, but they were the worst Tier 8 heavy tank by far. I would rather be in an AMX 5100 than a KV-4, but they got a little package of buffs in 7.5 that and 7.4 that have you know, it's a decent tank now. It's very well armoured. I'd love the shot of this Tiger too, but I ain't going to get it. And there's too much stuff in the way to hit that IS as well. So I'm going to have to close in. Now this KV-4's got another kill. And another kill. He's killed the Tiger 2. And KV-2 moving up as well. And I'm not sure, but it looks like his turret's pointing this way. And that one just misses. That's this gun for you. That's what it does. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Yes! And we're losing 9-11. KV-2. Oh, he's pointing his gun at me and I don't have much of a shot here. And I've given him plenty of time to aim. He kills my driver. Alright, I'm not having a dead driver in this. It looks like somebody set him on fire, but he used a repair kit, fire extinguisher, and then KV-4 kills him as well, so well done to the KV-4 player. Fantastic defence. Oh, bloody hell, where'd that Hellcat come from? And then something's shooting at my ass, but the range isn't good and it bounced. And I have a little bit of a derp moment here. I don't realise that that's a solid block of scenery, and I'm actually attempting to what I thought was drive through a brick wall, and I get shot in the ass again. No idea what by, but clearly this M18 is lighting me up for somebody, and then he hits me. And we finally take care of him. And here comes the artillery. Got to keep moving. Take another hit. Something is shooting at me. And you know what? It's that friggin' M6 that we failed to kill earlier. Because the gun wasn't accurate enough to hit him. That amount of damage? Well, actually, I don't know. 267, 266? No, that ain't the M6. I don't know what that is. Maybe the T28 doesn't have the best gun. Maybe it's the Lurver. But the M6 wouldn't be doing that much damage. Or would he? M6 can use a 90mm gun, can't he? Yeah, that might have been the M6. Well, whoever it was, they ain't shooting at me now, thank God. But now I can only take one more hit from pretty much anything. Yep, it was the M6, cheeky little bugger. Right, he needs to die. And the KV3 gets it. But now the KV3's on 3%, I'm on 14%. The KV4's not looking very healthy either. But now, suddenly, it's 3 of us versus 3 of them. We've pulled it back. It's still anybody's game. Now, I'm taking a bit of a chance here. It's entirely possible that one of those enemy tanks could be trying to sneak up on the left, up through the town that we were fighting in at the beginning. I'm a very, very juicy target crossing the middle of this open field, but I believe they have pulled back. This is what I would have done. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what the enemy team have done, but if they've survived this long, they're either camping their base or they're smart players and they've pulled back to shorten the defensive line. And that's what I'm gambling on. I'm gambling on them all being around their base. And there's the T28. Now he's on the other side of that little farmhouse. So I haven't spotted him, which means he doesn't know I'm here. And he pops out of view range, but there's the Lurver. Okay, come on. 15%. I can kill this fella with one hit. Just has to hit. Alright, not my problem. KV5's got him. And now I know exactly where this T28 is, and he has no idea I'm here. So I just need to get him before his artillery can finish me off. Again, this is very, very risky. I don't know how stupid their artillery is. He's taken one shot at me. It's missed. Missed by a country mile. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to still try to kill me. Just because he will also kill the T28 doesn't mean he's not stupid enough to not take the shot. And now I've got to keep moving. Got to keep moving. Got to move unpredictably. Got to move randomly. I'm surprised he hasn't fired at me again. Now we've got this one in the bag. I know that KV4 is a good driver. So, I've got two choices. I can sit here and cap and wait for him to either let us cap or expose himself by coming to try and get us. Or, there he is. I can rush out, take the shot and kill him, take the shot and miss, have him kill me, and then wait for the KV4 to finish him off, because he's exposed. And yeah, that's pretty much what happened. So yeah, I knew there was a 50-50 chance there that I was going to die or the M41 was going to die. As it happened, I was the one who died. But I knew that the very next thing that would happen was that KV4. Great driver, very good defensive player, 4 kills defending the base, practically single-handed until we turned up. I was confident he could finish the match for us. And that is exactly what happened. So after a 4-day streak of almost unbroken, nothing but tier 9 games, and a lot of 700 XP or 1000 XP defeats, I finally got a good, solid game in the IS, just showing what this thing can do. And when I say a good, solid game, tier 8 match, and that's 1800 XP and 62,000 credits. That was a good game. How did we do personally? 15 shots fired, 12 hit the target. Took a couple of long range shots. Unsurprisingly, they missed. The damage that we did in this game was all at point blank range, with a couple of with the exception of, I think, one shot at that M6 at a range in excess of 400 metres that actually hit, and did some damage. But it's worth taking the shot. I had nothing else to shoot at that point, and it wasn't putting myself in risk by doing it. And one of those shots paid off, but most of them didn't. This thing has to be used at short range. That's where it excels. And yeah, you're going to take a beating, but you can dish out a much bigger beating in most cases than they're capable of inflicting on you, and you just tend to win through superior firepower, basically. That gun takes far too long to aim. It is far too inaccurate to be shooting at anything more than 100 metres away. You want to get in their face. You want to use your pretty good frontal armour, but the devastating firepower of that gun in situations where you don't need to sit there for 3.4 seconds waiting for it to aim, because you're so close, you can't miss. And that gun, even in a tier 8 game, can do serious damage at short range to anything on the enemy team. In a tier 9 game, as we saw in the first replay, it's just not good enough. It is definitely, without question, the weakest of the tier 7 heavy tanks. The higher the battle tier goes, in a tier 7 match, it's a fantastic tank. In a tier 8 match, it's a good tank. In a tier 9 game, it's woefully inadequate, to a degree that the other 3 tier 7 heavy tanks are not, and that's purely because of the fact that this thing has to get up close and personal. It doesn't have the luxury of being able to shoot from long range and be effective that the German and the French tier 7 heavies have, and it doesn't have the strong defensive hull down capabilities that the T-29 have. In a tier 9 game, you have to expose yourself for far too long to get dodgy shots off that aren't even guaranteed to hit and penetrate in the first place, and it just makes this tank very, very weak in a tier 9 match. But in a tier 7 or 8 game, oh yeah, this is just fun. Monstrous alpha damage, and people are afraid of getting shot at by ISs because they know how much pain they can inflict. It's kind of like the SU-100, practically the same gun, just a much more mobile package with better armour. So that was the IS, the Russian tier 7 heavy tank, showing the good points and hopefully the bad points. And I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll catch you next time.